Welcome to today's episode of Autosphere's Supplier Spotlight. You know, accidents happen, and so do lawsuits. Dealerships can avoid both with a well-managed health and safety program. Now, if you're not sure where to start or whether your current health and safety program leaves you exposed to liability, well, today on this episode of Supplier Spotlight, we're going to dig into all those details with Nick Hardesty, the Director of EHS Field Services for KPA. Thanks for joining us, Nick. We're glad to have you here today.
Absolutely, Jack. Pleasure to be here.
So let me jump right into it. Many business owners don't like to think about health and safety until it's too late, until something happens at the dealership level, somebody gets into an accident or something, right? Why is that a bad business strategy?
Well, you're exactly right. It is a bad business strategy, but it's a common one, unfortunately, that I've seen in the dealership world. I've been working with dealers for over 20 years, assisting them with their compliance, environmental health and safety, trying to build safety cultures. And unfortunately, like you said, it is a common one. This idea that we'll do something when it happens, right? So I think too many business owners in the dealership world, they underestimate the real importance of environmental health and safety in their workplace. Until they have a serious accident, they're dealing with the ministry, looking at possible citations, then it becomes a priority for them. So it is absolutely important as an owner of a dealership to make sure that you're looking at and put the importance on building that safety culture. I get it. They're looking at day to day. We're trying to run the dealership, make it profitable, take care of our customers. That's absolutely important. But I would argue that going hand in hand with that is having a good, positive health and safety program, because it reaps benefits down the line, keeping your employees happy. They're more productive. They're excited to come into work. They're going home at the end of the day safe, ready to come back the next day and be productive and great employees. So it goes without saying, really, that a positive health and safety culture is not something you should wait until bad things happen. You need to be proactive about it.
So, honestly speaking, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what's a worst case scenario at a dealership?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is there's a lot of really bad things that can happen in a dealership. The two primary things that probably come to mind for folks in the dealership world are large dollar citations. We're dealing with the ministry. They're coming in, they're issuing citations to the business owners, or a serious injury. So, those serious injuries could be something that lead up to death. I've seen it a number of times over the 20 years that I've been working with dealerships. Unfortunately, they do happen. So, as I spoke to before, we want to make sure that we're being proactive and really thinking about health and safety in the dealership world.
So you must have some horror stories. Like what's kind of the worst kind of thing that you've heard of?
Absolutely. So horror stories can range from a $100,000 vehicle falling off of a lift, and the damages and all the costs associated with that, to a serious injury, an extremely serious injury up to death. I was thinking about this, and just recently we had one of our dealerships that we work with had an office employee. They were walking from the showroom into the service drive on their phone, taking care of something, as you would imagine, focusing on their phone. There's a rug in between that corridor between the showroom and the service drive, and right on the corner of the rug, their toe hit it. They fell, didn't brace themselves because they were too focused on their phone, fell over and fractured their femur. They've been out for a month, not really sure exactly when they're coming back, but those kind of stories do happen, and they happen all the time. You can have the best health and safety program, but it is important to make sure that we are actively working towards improving, our efforts, reviewing those accidents, how do they happen, preventing them in the future.
So something as silly as a rug can
Yeah,
lead to, I guess, a huge expense for the dealership, right?
absolutely. Just the littlest things, right? Probably the most common accident in a dealership is going to be your slip and falls on the same level. Uh, whether it's in the wintertime with ice and snow out on the lot, people walking around on the parking lot, people falling on the same level. That's year in and year out, the single most frequent accident in a dealership is falls on the same level, followed by cuts and scrapes and different things for your techs out in the shop. So, looking at and reviewing, doing regular audits of your facility to try to identify those hazards and make sure that we're taking preventative measures are key. It's for as simple as a rug, right?
Yeah. So, a slip and fall or some kind of accident that can ruin someone's health, it can ruin someone's life. Those are serious things. Can it also ruin the dealership? I mean, in the sense that it ruins the brand, ruins the reputation of the store, maybe cost them a lot financially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one accident is probably not going to ruin a brand. But as you talk about, a serious accident has a lot of ramifications down the line, right? It's going to affect, as you said, that employee that suffered that injury, severe injury that puts them in the hospital, has a long recovery period. That affects them, their physical health, their mental health, as well as the other employees around them and the management team. So, and if you have a trend of multiple accidents happening, what that does is say to the employees that, maybe that morale within the dealership isn't quite, it's not going to be quite what you want it to be. Now, when you look at how does it affect the reputation, the brand of the dealership, something like that takes time. It's likely not going to be one incident, but if you do have a death in the dealership due to unsafe actions, willful ignorance of a hazard in the facility, something like that can absolutely have effect on not only your employees but outside of the dealership in the surrounding community. The dealership is going to be looked at a little bit differently, and especially if you see that over time, that can affect, have repercussions that extend into the financial realm, right? With legal, regulatory consequences, regulatory citations that you're dealing with. So, that that long-term damage to your brand and reputation decreases sales, it diminishes customer loyalty, and erodes trust in the surrounding community. So it's absolutely important that you're focusing on the health and safety of your employees, not just when something bad happens.
That leads us to an interesting question. So, what can dealers do to prevent these problems? I mean, and can they tackle health and safety on their own? I mean, I think a lot of our audience will be thinking, well, how difficult can this be? I can do this on my own. Can they do this on their own?
Yeah, I think, dealerships can do some of this stuff on their own. And actually, it's probably best that they do a lot of stuff. They have to manage this, right? So they have to manage this on a day-to-day basis. They have to have individuals that take this seriously, that care about it. That said, there's so much that goes into compliance, right? So meeting your regulatory obligations as set forth by the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there's a lot to that, right? So you're talking about WMIS regulations, you're talking about personal protective equipment, respiratory protection, lockout, tagout, all these different things that if you're not an expert in that field, it can be difficult to keep up on it. So, I'll give you a couple examples of where dealerships might have the best intentions to do it on their own, and it doesn't quite pan out in the long run. For example, joint health and safety meetings. In Ontario specifically, a dealership with over 20 employees is required to have a joint health and safety meeting where you have management and labor involved in that meeting on a regular basis to address hazards in the workplace. Talk about accidents, talk about any safety concerns that there may be. As I said, the dealerships with the best intentions, they might have success for a month or two, 6 months, but then ultimately what ends up happening is it kind of goes to the wayside because the regular day-to-day activities that they have, the priorities of the dealership, the customers tend to come first. So it does help to have an outside resource, a trusted partner that's helping you with those activities. Another example is going to be SDS management. So within the WMIS regulations, the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System standard, you have to have SDSs, current and accurate safety data sheets for every chemical in your workplace. You can absolutely do that. You can manage it. You can put it in a database where employees can get it, but it can be extremely difficult to manage that over time. Those SDSs change. You get new products into the system, so it can be extremely beneficial to have another outside party helping you with that, having a database, managing all those things for you, so you can go back to worrying about your customers, being productive in the dealership, keeping your employees happy and your customers happy, and let the experts take care of that.
Okay, so with that thought in mind, um, what can KPA do? How can KPA help in this situation?
Yeah, so KPA offers a wide range of compliance solutions for dealerships. That ranges from our software platform, our on-site consulting, or a combination thereof. So, I like to think of how does KPA help dealerships? We're on-site, online, and on-call. We provide solutions that work for dealerships to make them more productive, allow them to really focus on the dealership, but also have a system and process in place to allow them to comply with the regulations. So things like within our VeriSuite platform, we have a number of different features and tools in our software that can streamline a dealership's process with respect to compliance. Things like audits and inspections, allowing them to do inspections, incident management, reviewing their incidents, tracking those, looking for trends, identifying near misses in the dealership. Those are things you can track over time. Safety data sheet management, as I mentioned, online training, which is an invaluable resource. Training is invaluable when you talk about just building a safety culture within your dealership, meeting your regulatory obligations. Online training is vital. And then ultimately, the tool also provides mobile-ready applications with their KPA app to allow managers and employees to be out in the shop, access anything, anywhere, at any time, to keep their dealership safe and access all of the different trainings, programs, inspections that they might need to manage their compliance programs.
Right. So for those in our audience watching this thinking, okay, this sounds like something that I should be taking advantage of. What does a typical KPA consultation look like? Let's say they want to get the ball rolling, your team comes in. What does that initial meeting look like? What do they need to set up? And let's say somebody's starting from scratch. They have no health and safety program in place at the dealership. How long does it take to go from like zero to actual full compliance or full protection?
Great question. And that's a pretty common circumstance that we run into as dealerships that are kind of starting from the ground one. Where do we go from here, right? We need your help. Get us to where we want to be. It doesn't happen overnight. I'll start by saying our team in Canada we have a team right in Ontario. They're servicing clients. They're out in the field. They provide that on-site support for our dealerships in Canada from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So providing on-site services to dealerships there. What does that look like? Generally, that first visit where we're getting on site is going to be really starting to implement the online platform to make sure that we get all of our employees in there. We get our managers in there. They understand what the resources they have at their disposal. And then the consultants are really going to go to work. Our experts in environmental health and safety there in Canada are going to be gathering that chemical inventory. So literally walking through your dealership, looking through every cabinet, cupboard, department, gathering that chemical inventory. They're going to be doing an emergency response map to identify and create a professional evac map that you can put up in your dealership to identify first aid kits, fire extinguishers, other emergency information. Additionally, they're going to be generating written programs. They're going to be doing a full broad spectrum audit of the dealership to provide you a snapshot of where you're at. What issues do you have? Liabilities do you have throughout your dealership? But not only just identifying them, but working with your management team and your employees to kind of help kickstart that joint health and safety committee meeting so that we can have a process to identify those issues and remedy them over time. We really pride ourselves on not just walking in and telling you what's wrong and then walking out. We want to make sure that we're helping the dealership find those solutions. And if we've got that solution, we're going to help you with it, or we're going to give you some advice on best management practices to fix that and make sure we don't have that issue in the future. One thing you did mention, Jack, is how do they get to full compliance? One of the things that I'd like to point out, we have dealerships that have been with us for 20 plus years. Compliance isn't necessarily something you get to the finish line and you get the trophy. It's a journey, right? Everybody's on their compliance journey. Some at ground one, ground zero, let's say, and others are maybe further along in their journey. But even those that are further along in their journey have ways to improve, and that's where having the software and different aspects of the KPA process that we can help you with take you to an even further level. So there's always room for improvement, and that's really part of, and I'll point out, a part of a good safety and health program is constant improvement. You always want to look for ways to improve, whether that's increasing your training, reducing potential hazards, identifying new ways to limit hazards to your employees. So there's all kinds of different ways you can continue to improve, and there's always something new, especially when we're talking about standards and regulations. Things are always changing, so we got to make sure that we're on top of that, and that's where having an expert in environmental health and safety can be vital for a dealership, because they just don't have people that's their job.
So let's say that everything's set up. I mean, setting up a whole program is one thing. Now you got to kind of keep it going, and you have to manage it, and that can be a whole new challenge. Is this something
Yes.
dealers can do on their own? Do they need help? And if they do need help, how can KPA help?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say having a process where it's 2024, and having technology as part of your health and safety program is imperative. So if a dealership is managing their compliance with clipboards and paperwork and Excel files, I would absolutely recommend they start looking at investing in some sort of technology to help them out, take them into the 2024 and beyond, right? So the goal of compliance is to keep people safe, but at the same time, we want to make sure that our managers are being productive. They're reducing their administrative time and manually managing this kind of stuff. That can come into play, especially for dealership groups that have multiple rooftops. If you're a dealership group that has 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 plus locations, having technology as a resource for you to manage and keep all of that information, your accidents, your SDSs, your programs, your issues that you're tracking and managing in one centralized place is vital, really. Otherwise, it just becomes that manual process that, as we talked about earlier on, it falls to the wayside, and we'll deal with it later, or we just won't even deal with it at all because it's just too difficult to manage that with pen and paper and Excel files. So having that additional resource, somebody like a KPA with our tools and our processes, and having ways to automate, track, and manage your compliance is extremely important as you look to, as we talked about, improving your health and safety program.
So does that mean that in order to keep this program running, once it's already set up, does like a KPA consultant have to physically come into my dealership from time to time, or can all this be done with KPA's software, and then maybe have a manager look through a list of to-do items every day?
Yeah, you can certainly do it just with software. That's not out of the realm of possibility. I would, and what my experience is with working with dealerships for as long as I have, it absolutely helps having that expert come in to be your trusted advisor, right? So you're having that individual that knows what they're talking about, can come in, be an advocate for employees and managers up to ownership to say, hey, we've got these issues and here's why, right? Here's the compliance side of it, but also how does that translate into really keeping our people safe, having a good, robust health and safety program. So yeah, they can do it on their own with software, absolutely. But it does help having somebody that knows what they're doing, is an EHS professional driving that bus. Otherwise, having an EHS expert from KPA come in to assist and help and guide is invaluable.
So we've learned a lot about what the problem is. We've learned a lot about how KPA can help deal with this issue, but some of our viewers may not be familiar with KPA. So what can you tell us about KPA and your footprint here in Canada?
Yeah, so KPA's been around for 30 plus years. We started in California, actually, down in the States. We currently work with over 15,000 new used car, truck, RV, motorcycle dealers in the US and into Canada. As I mentioned earlier, our team are seeing clients from British Columbia all the way over to Nova Scotia and the Atlantic coast. So we strive, and our solution is to strive to provide a software platform and a consulting operations team that can be that trusted partner for you. And we've been doing it, focusing on the dealership world for a long time, making sure that the solution that we provide is right for dealerships and is going to be something that they see as valuable and want to utilize to really build their safety culture in their dealerships.
So, Nick, how can someone get in touch with you? Let's say our viewers have seen this, they understand the issue, they understand how KPA can help. What's kind of the next step, or where can they get more information?
Absolutely. The best place for somebody to go is to our website. So www.kpa.io is going to be the place where they're going to want to go. There are a lot of resources on the website, white papers, a blog, information for dealers on anything you can imagine when it comes to compliance in the dealership world. You can request a demo to see the software, find out a little bit more about KPA and how we can help you build or expand upon what you already have in your dealership when it comes to compliance.
Well, Nick, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. It was a very informative session. I think our audience is walking away with an understanding that this health and safety is something that we need to take seriously before something happens. And there is a process to put in place. There are compliance issues. It's something that they can do on their own, but really, in order to make sure that they have all their bases covered, they need an expert like somebody from KPA to give them the program and to help them to manage it and to keep it in place for the long term. So thank you very much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you, Jack. Again, I had a great time. I really appreciate the opportunity.